It's just 5 p.m. across India. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global, where we will get you all the top stories from India and the region. I'm Anil Thomas. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Stuart Smith. What are the big stories that we are tracking today? Stuart?
Thanks, Anil. It's 11:30 a.m. in London and 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we head live to Israel to get reaction to Hamas's latest ceasefire proposal. A disaster in the Mediterranean sees 60 dead, and Europe seeks unity on Ukraine. But first, back to you, Anil, for the headlines.
India rejects US CAA remarks as misplaced, unwarranted. MEA puts CAA as country's internal matter. Russian President Vladimir Putin eyes re-election amid Ukraine conflict and the absence of credible opposition. NATO calls polls not free and fair. And first ship carrying humanitarian aid nears the Gaza coast. Hamas floats proposal for exchange of hostages and prisoners with Israel. The Election Commission of India will announce the schedule for this year's general elections at a press conference tomorrow. The media briefing will be live streamed on social media platform on the ECI at 3 p.m. Indian Standard Time. The newly appointed election commissioners Gyaneshwar Kumar and Sukhbir Singh Sandhu took charge of the office on Friday. They were appointed as election commissioners by the selection panel led by the Prime Minister, and it comprised of the leader of the main opposition in Lok Sabha and a union minister. The two vacancies were created in the Election Commission after the retirement of Anup Chandra Pandey in February and the resignation of Arun Goel recently, days ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha polls. The new commissioners will have joined their offices to help the poll body conduct these elections. Well, staying with elections but shifting to Russia, where voting is underway in Russia's presidential elections on the first day of a ballot that will be held across 3 days. Incumbent Vladimir Putin is all but certain to win against three challengers, none of whom has criticized him. Putin's popularity is also high amid strong support for Russia in their conflict with Ukraine. Putin's approval ratings is currently 86%, up from 71% shortly before the invasion of Ukraine. This is according to Levada Center, that's a Russian pollster. Well, voting is also underway in the Ukrainian regions annexed by Russia. Russia-backed head of Donetsk region, Denis Pushkin, cast his vote in the ongoing elections. While many of the residents of Donetsk region participated in the polls, Ukraine has expressed their dismay regarding these elections. Voters in Crimea also took part in Russia's ongoing presidential elections. But for more on the story, we've got Dasha Chernushova joining us live from Russia as people there vote. Rasha, good evening. Let me begin by asking you, as Russia votes over the next 3 days, how does Russia's elections matter?
Well, obviously, it is an important legitimizing exercise for the Russian authorities as it is seen by the international community. But domestically, it is an important opportunity for the Russians to exercise their civic duty, as President Putin has put it forward. So we understand that the turnout by this hour has exceeded 7% nationwide. We have seen people coming to the polling stations like this one here in the Russian capital, all pretty much in a positive defensive mode, saying that they do have to come here and to cast their ballot. But they also have an opportunity to do that online. This is one of the novelties of this presidential election. It is not only being held not just for one day but for 3, but also online, and we understand that many have used this opportunity. At the same time, we understand that voting is underway in the so-called new territories of Russia, where people have an opportunity to both come to the polling stations, or they have had a chance to cast their ballot with the mobile teams coming to their houses. It has been criticized by some of the international community, but as we hear from the observers who have been commenting to the Russian media here domestically, they have not reported any major irregularities. Another important issue is obviously that Russians do say that they want to continue with the stability they have seen in their country over the course of the past years, and that's why we understand the approval ratings of the incumbent presidents are very high. The turnout is expected to reach 70% by the end of the third day of the voting, and obviously the incumbent president Vladimir Putin is expected to win this election with a vast majority.
Well, Dasha, the European Council boss, has taken an aim at Putin even though voting has just begun.
Well, obviously, in the Western countries, the election is expected to be criticized. At least Moscow has always been saying that indeed they understand the Western countries are trying to interfere with the election. We heard from the head of Russia's foreign intelligence, Sergei Narishkin, saying that the Western countries are trying to decrease the turnout to later put in question the voting here. But what Moscow insists on is that it is the democratic exercise of the Russian people. They do have a choice. There are 4 candidates on the ballot. So Moscow is saying that everything is in line with the international norms. There are international observers. There are cameras in almost all of the polling stations. And that's why Moscow is saying that all the criticism coming from the Western countries will not be regarded or taken into account here domestically.
We'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us. Dasha Chernoshova, DD India's correspondent there, joining us from Russia. Well, next, updates from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. France, Germany and Poland meeting in Berlin for tripartite talks on Ukraine. Stuart Smith is in London and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Stuart, do you see Scholz, Macron and
German
Tusk
Chancellor
meeting
Olaf Scholz
and solving this through talks, hashing out all those differences?
In Berlin on Friday. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is hosting his French and Polish counterparts in Berlin on Friday to attempt to project European unity towards support for Ukraine after weeks of tension between the allies. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz will meet for the first time following disagreements between the two on how best to help Ukraine. European Council President Charles Michel is also in Berlin and held talks with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on the ongoing conflict and the Russian presidential elections. The Kremlin on Friday commented on French President Emmanuel Macron's remarks about the possibility of sending troops to Ukraine. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that France was already involved in the conflict and had now signaled it was ready for deeper involvement.
The fact that Russia is advisory for France. Yes, this is absolutely clear because France is already involved in the war in Ukraine. In fact, it is indirectly participating in this war, and judging by the statements of the president, he is not opposed to increasing his level of involvement.
Earlier on Thursday, Macron called Russia an adversary that would not stop in Ukraine if it defeated Kiev's troops in the 2-year-old conflict. Macron has warned that Europe should prepare for war if it seeks peace.
Il y a 2 ans, nous disions jamais on n'enverra de chars.
If the war were to spread in Europe, it would be Russia's only choice and responsibility. But to decide, us today, to be weak, to decide today that we would not respond to it, is already to be in defeat. But that I do not want.
Escalade, nous ne sommes pas en guerre contre la Russie.
In the latest from the conflict, 2 people were killed in the Ukrainian region of Vinnytsia after Russia launched its second overnight mass drone attack in 2 days. The strike damaged a residential building. Ukraine's Air Force said all 27 Iranian-made drones had been shot down by air defences over 7 regions across the country, including the capital. They also said Russian forces had fired 8 missiles in eastern and central Ukraine. A humanitarian aid supply ship from Cyprus, towing a barge loaded with supplies, has arrived off the coast of Gaza on Friday. The vessel is loaded with 200 tons of food and aid, from which supplies are expected to be delivered to Gaza by jetty. Arranged by the World Central Kitchen, the shipment is part of a pilot project to open a new sea corridor, and the second ship is expected to sail soon. In the latest from the Israel-Hamas conflict, Hamas has presented a Gaza ceasefire proposal to mediators, which includes the first stage of releasing Israeli women, children and elderly hostages. They've also proposed to release ill hostages in exchange for the release of 700 to 1,000 prisoners. In its proposal, Hamas said a deadline for Israel's withdrawal from Gaza would be agreed upon completion of the first stage. Meanwhile, Egypt is also pushing for a ceasefire and for the entry of aid into Gaza. In a recorded message on Friday, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said they are doing their best to reach an agreement.
We are doing our utmost best to reach a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. We made sure, and we were always saying, that Rafah crossing is open and we are ready to enter any kind of aid.
DD India's Alex Carrier joins us live. Alex, is Hamas's latest proposal being taken seriously by Israel?
Well, Stuart, it's being taken seriously enough that the War Cabinet and the Security Cabinet, we understand, are discussing that proposal. The Israeli government War Cabinet, between those several opposing parties in the Israeli Knesset, and of course the security establishment of Israel discussing it as well. Now, we've had a response from the Prime Minister's office saying that Hamas continues to make completely unreasonable demands, and so hinting at the current proposal being unacceptable to Israel. We've also had Prime Minister Netanyahu calling it ridiculous. However, behind the scenes, Israeli officials are saying this is something we can work with. Now, let me run you through some of the terms of that counter proposal by Hamas. I must say this has been going back and forth quite a few times between both sides through those mediators. Now, the terms of the deal would be that hostages, Israeli hostages being held in those terrible conditions in Gaza, the women hostages, injured and elderly, would be released in exchange for 700 to 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in that first phase, which would then lead up to a ceasefire. Another proposal by Hamas is that this would then move on to further phases of these negotiations, which would ultimately lead to a permanent ceasefire and a full withdrawal of Israeli troops in Gaza. Now, we understand from Israeli officials behind the scenes that number of Palestinian prisoners, 700 to 1,000, is still far too high, and the idea that a permanent ceasefire will happen and that Israeli forces will pull out of Gaza is simply unacceptable to Israel. But the Hamas proposal is being perceived by Israel as something that they could work with, that they can negotiate with. We've seen those talks be stalled for days and days and days, with mediators summoning Hamas to Cairo. We've seen Qatar threatening to kick Hamas leaders out of Qatar, but they've been stalled for so long. Now, with this counter-proposal by Hamas and the Israeli government looking at that proposal, there may be slow progress. Stuart?
Thanks, Alex. Alex Carrier there in Israel. At least 60 people have reportedly died while attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea. The migrant boat left Libya sometime last week but broke down shortly after, leaving the migrants stranded. The central Mediterranean is one of the world's most dangerous sea migration routes. According to the UN Migration Agency, almost 2,500 migrants died or went missing last year, and 226 since the start of 2024. DD India's Ishan Garg has more.
The migrants on the boat that sailed from Libya are believed to have been headed for Italy or Malta in Europe. The rescue team that finally found the boat adrift at sea says it managed to save 25 people. But not before many on the boat perished, likely due to a lack of basic supplies. Those on the rubber dinghy included at least one child and several women. SOS Mediterranee, the charity that carried out the rescue op, says it believes that the engine on the boat broke down 3 days after it left Libya, and the migrants were stranded at sea without food or water. The survivors were found in dire health conditions. 2 were unconscious and have now been flown to Sicily to recover. Many of those saved are being treated with supplemental oxygen as their condition remains serious. Now, the International Organization for Migration has deemed the Mediterranean one of the deadliest places in the world for migrants. Since 2014, close to 30,000 migrants have died or have been reported missing in the area. According to the UN agency's data, 11 children are among the 360 who have been reported missing just this year. Many leaving their home countries for Europe are facing severe financial hardships, religious persecutions, or are facing famine and war. Rescue workers who saved those on board the boat from Libya have been asked to head to Ancona in Italy, designated a safe place for the migrants, but that's about 1,450 kilometers away from the rescue boat's position. It is carrying a total of 224 survivors from various boats in the area. The rescue team says they need medical attention and are urging officials to allow disembarking at a closer location. Ishan Garg in Brussels, reporting for DD India.
That's it from me here in London. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Stuart, for those updates. Well, still to come on DD India Global. Haiti hangs in limbo as unrest and gang violence swamp the Caribbean nation. Fast food giant Mac suffers global tech outage, rules out cybersecurity incident.
Why have the big 5 powers of the United Nations Security Council seen no change in 8 decades? Who is stalling reform of the world body, and for how long can we wait? Are we truly alone in the universe, or are there aliens who keep playing hide and seek with us? Watch Connecting the Dots to get the full picture every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
You're watching DD India Global. I'm Anil Thomas. Bhutan Prime Minister Shering Tobgay called on India's Draupadi Murmu at Rashtrapati Bhavan in New Delhi on Friday. The president said that India is privileged to partner with Bhutan in development cooperation sector towards enhancing the socio-economic well-being and prosperity of the people of Bhutan. Bhutan's Prime Minister Tobgay visited Rajghat in New Delhi, where he paid homage to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Bhutan next week. Bhutan's Prime Minister Shering Tobgay, who's on a visit to India, extended invitation to Prime Minister Modi to visit Bhutan. Prime Minister accepted the invitation. During his meeting with Prime Minister Modi on Thursday, the Prime Minister of Bhutan conveyed his deep appreciation for India's role as a reliable, trusted and valued partner in Bhutan's developmental priorities. India's Prime Minister visited the southern state of Kerala and participated in the Lok Sabha polls campaign of NDA candidates today. The Prime Minister attended a public meeting at the district stadium in Pathanamthitta district in Kerala. Addressing the gathering, he hailed the central government's efforts for helping the citizens in the last 10 years and said all efforts for every category of people in every area of the world was made by the central government.
पिछले 10 वर्षों में हमने देश के हर क्षेत्र, हर वर्ग के लिए जितना ज्यादा काम कर सकते हैं करने का प्रयास किया है। आप जानते हैं, हम युद्ध के बीच फंसी हमारी नर्स बहनों को भारत वापस लेकर आए थे इराक से। हमने संकट में फंसे हमारे पादरियों को बाहर निकाल करके सुरक्षित वापस लाए थे। कोरोना के समय दुनिया के हर हिस्से से भारतवासियों को स्वदेश पहुंचाया है, क्योंकि जहां एक भी भारतीय परेशानी में होगा, वहां उसके साथ हमारी सरकार मजबूती से खड़ी होगी। ये है मोदी युड़े गारंटी।
Earlier on Friday, Prime Minister addressed a public meeting in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. The women Bharatiya Janata Party leaders felicitated and welcomed Prime Minister Modi during the public rally in the state's Kanyakumari city. Addressing the gathering, the Prime Minister accused the state's ruling DMK and Congress of being involved in corruption. The Prime Minister said that while the BJP government at the centre gave the country achievements like Digital India, the DMK Congress committed the 2G scam. Earlier, Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randeep Jaiswal briefed media in New Delhi on Friday. Addressing the media, Jaiswal emphasized India's Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 is an internal matter and in alignment with India's inclusive traditions and its commitment to human rights.
The Citizenship Amendment Act 2019 is an internal matter of India and is in keeping with India's inclusive traditions and a long-standing commitment to human rights. The Act grants a safe haven to persecuted minorities belonging to Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi and Christian communities from Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh who have entered India on or before 31st December 2014. The CA is about giving citizenship, not about taking away citizenship. So this must be underlined.
MEA spokesperson also underscored that Indian embassy is in constant touch with the Indian community amidst the crisis in Haiti.
We have established a control room here in the Ministry of External Affairs. We have emergency helpline numbers. Our embassy in Santo Domingo in Dominican Republic, which has the accreditation for Haiti, has also established a control room, has also established helplines. There are some 50 to 80 Indian community members there. The embassy is in touch with all of them. We are monitoring the situation. As you know, there is a crisis in Haiti, and if required, we will evacuate. We are ready to evacuate, and if required, we will do that. Our embassy in Santo Domingo is monitoring the situation, and the ministry also is fully monitoring the situation.
Well, in view of the ongoing crisis in Haiti, a 24-hour control room has been set up in India's Ministry of External Affairs to monitor the situation and to provide information and assistance. In addition, a 24-hour emergency helpline has also been set up. People in Haiti rushed to the borders with the neighboring Dominican Republic to stock up supplies amid a worsening humanitarian crisis. Access to trade market on the Dominican border has been limited to 2 days a week as unrest continues in the region. The political situation in Haiti hangs in limbo after Prime Minister Ariel Henry announced his resignation on Monday. Gang violence has swamped the Caribbean country with a shootout in one neighborhood and an attack on the police academy early on Thursday. A local gang leader has sent threatening messages aimed at political leaders who would lead a transitional council. Well, time to take a look at other stories making news around the world. Somalian security forces have neutralized the attackers who stormed the Sky Hotel near the president's office on Thursday evening, according to local media reports. Security services were earlier seen surrounding the hotel usually frequented by government officials and lawmakers following the attacks claimed by Al-Shabaab militants. Well, fast food giant McDonald's Japan said it had halted operations at many stores nationwide on Friday due to a system disruption. Sales at around 3,000 shops of the chain in Japan were affected, with technical issues also reported in Australia, New Zealand and Hong Kong stores. Well, Canada-based company Waymo has launched a phone service in Nigeria which allows people in remote locations with no internet service to access AI technology. Traditional handsets can tap into local mobile phone networks to send commands or requests for information through SMS or voice calls. The Bureau of Energy Efficiency, operating under the Ministry of Power in the Indian government, has introduced a new standards and labeling program. This was launched by India's Minister for Power and New and Renewable Energy, R.K. Singh, in New Delhi. The grid-connected solar inverter initiative promises substantial energy conservation. Projections indicate that this program could deliver remarkable energy savings amounting to 21.1 billion kilowatt hours from 2024 to 2034, coupled with a potential decline in carbon dioxide emissions by approximately 15.1 million tons during the specified time frame. Well, now let us take you to the Siberian city of Yakutsk, where a rather uncommon ceremony of good wishes was conducted by local shamans at a poll station for the ongoing Russian presidential election. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Global, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. We're going to be right back. You can also find us online on ddindia.co.in, and we're going to be right back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Anil Thomas from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global.